It's the Gambian FA Cup final here at Boxbar Stadium. Real de Banjul against Walida. Boxbar Stadium is packed to capacity. The panting and yelling, the drumming, the sabar and the gesegese. Two are rivals of Gambian football. One founded in 1967 and the other 5 years later. The greatest of all time, Alhaji Njai Biri, who has suited up against the greats like Shirif Suleiman of Guinea, Laurent Poco of the Ivory Coast, is here on the Walidan side. Sehuzar, a legend in his own right, on the Real de Banjul side, and it will be nicknamed the Biri's Sehuzar final. We are sat here at Boxbar Stadium. The supporters are all set on either side of Boxbar Stadium. The central referee, Babitase, assisted by referee linesman Alhaji Gailu Pai and Ose O'Brien Cook. Babitase gives the green lights and away we go. Alhaji Njai Biri is one on to Babakar Rounds. The midfield general. He lays it on to Pambu at the right hand flank of the field. Pambu sprinting and controlling. Sends a long one. It is a goal kick to Real de Banjul. Goalkeeper Jim Water, tall and long feet. Common pool. Positions this one on the carpet for Abdullah Jain to play his lines. Abdullah Jain standing hands akimbo. Gives it a left foot grip. Grip inside Walidan's territory. Taken away by Panda. Into Laos. Outfinds Dembandau. Dembandau lays it on to Lai Conte. Like on the big pass, Gabature coming in towards the 18, he lays a pass on to Alhaji Njai Biri. It is a goal. It is a goal. What a magnificent goal. The Gambia's football ambassador, Alhaji Njai Biri. His stadium is going bananas.
Bananas indeed. Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of Talking Sports. By way of Washington, D.C. and our studios in Sweden, where Mama Lingersar is in charge of studio operations. My guest today is my fraternity brother and an aspirant for the presidency of the Gambia Football Federation, Mr. Sadibou Kamaso is my guest on Talking Sports. Sadibou, welcome to Talking Sports.
Thank you, Mr. Cisse. I'm struggling to hear you. For some reason, I think it might be on my side, but thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
It is a pleasure having you. Of course, you continue to do your bit in Gambian football, and it has come to a point that you are aspiring for the presidency of the GFF. We will talk about that today. We will talk about football in the Gambia, and we will talk about your vision. We will also talk about the objectives that you have in place in this 1 hour program. First of all, for those who do not know you, briefly tell them who Sadibou Kamaso is.
Thank you once again, Mr. Cisse. My name is Sadibou Kamaso. I was born and raised in Banjul, 41 Grand Street to be precise. I did my nursery school at Methodist Nursery School. From there I went to Methodist Primary School. From Methodist Primary School, I went to Gambia Senior Secondary School. Gambia Middle School, rather, because we were the first batch to have started this grading system. I did 3 years in Gambia Middle School, which is high school. From there, I went to Gambia Senior Secondary School. I graduated, ventured into business, started working in Student and Youth Travel Organization. From then, I worked for different institutions, established my own business, and eventually went to the UK, and then came back to establish Creation Plus, which I still own and run. But then again, when I came back from the UK, I started this business and joined Hawks Football Club as assistant general secretary for about 2-3 years, and I was elevated to the position of general secretary from 2013, which I still hold.
Thank you for that brief rundown. Now, you are running for the presidency of the Gambia Football Federation. And by far and large, you surprised everyone by announcing you will break ranks with your own executive to contest against your boss, Lamin Kababayo. Now, has there been any internal rift in the GFF to lead to you declaring your candidacy for the presidency of the Gambia Football Federation?
Well, I said this in previous interviews, and I'll just make it clear again. When you field in a starting 11 or when you field in a team of players, even the captain gets substituted at some point. You have vision, you have a strategy that you want to implement to win the game, and you realize the game plan is not going as according to what had been discussed. I think there's nothing wrong with making substitution and bringing in fresh new legs to continue. So for me, it's not about breaking ranks or whatever. We all had a great vision that was to develop football and take it further. And it got to a point where you realize that the game plan is not getting you the desired results. If you get to a point where even the fans, your own fans, are going against you, I think there's a need for there to be change. There's a substitution so that you can bring in fresh minds and fresh legs so that they can take the game forward. So it's not about breaking ranks. For us, we can bring in fresh legs so we can continue what we all started. Everyone loves Gambian football, but when the game is not going as planned, the best thing to do is to bring in a substitute that will take the game forward. Sometimes people get substituted and they leave the pitch and storm outside the pitch and not even shake the coach's hand. So, for us, my team and I see this as a substitution because this team we are talking about is owned by the whole country. And the people that are behind me, the people who are backing me, see that this is an opportune moment for us to make the substitution that will cause the point that we desire to take Gambian football forward. So for me, it's not us breaking ranks.
I hear you loud and clear. Before I go to my next question, let me just tell viewers, if you want to send in your questions, please send it to me in the Linger Post message box. I'll see it from there. But Mr. Kamaso, you just talked about substitution. As long as I've been in football, I know that when something doesn't work, in an 11, you substitute. Now, if we look in, if we take it if we look into the whole thing based on your premise here, what is wrong, particularly when the Gambia just surprised the whole world in Cameroon? How do you fault that achievement?
I don't think it will be right to measure the success of the Gambian Football Federation measuring using the success in Africa. I mean, credits to the Gambian Football Federation. Sacrifices have been made to get the Scorpions to qualify here. A lot of sacrifices have been made in terms of spending money and taking money from other areas. But then again, this development is holistic. The national team we are on about. The national team issues is something that we need to sit with government and have a holistic approach where government knows this is where they have been. Of recent, we have seen that having a good relationship with government can take you further because they've started chartering flights, paying all the qualification bonuses and everything. Now, what the Gambia Football Federation should do is to focus on the grassroots. There are kids that are here. There are players who have career-threatening injuries. We're struggling with pitches. We have league matches that do not go on as planned. Games get changed within 24 hours. We have a lot of issues. We need to regularize grassroots football. We have these age-cheating issues at the grassroots level. Even at the secretariat level, women's football development, professionalization of our league. So if you look at that, then it is the players who are already professional that the coach pays attention to outside that would benefit. What about the players that are based here in the Gambia? All these players play a big part and they're all looking forward to going outside. So we need to have proper structures in place so that that bottom-top approach is a reality, because the third division league is run by the region. And these regions are not well housed. They are not properly structured. Regional football associations. I mean, some of them barely have an office space that they would call office stores. You have regional there. So all these things are things that people want to come regularize. Even the players who are playing in Europe would know that players who are playing locally challenged, for place in the national team. We do make that all those who are outside and those who are in here benefit as well. So it is not the success of the national team at the AFCON that we could look at. It has to be holistic because there are a lot of other things that are involved.
Now, with the litany you've went through, I would take it that as a member of the GFF executive, these are things that you have put on the table before and it has not been looked into. Would it be fair to say that? Did we lose our connection? Are you there?
Yes, I'm right here. I'm right here.
I said with the litany that you just went through, would it be fair to say these are all things that you as an executive member has put on the table in an executive gathering and it wasn't paid heed to? No heed was paid to it.
Well, it is not all the ideas that I have put in my starting 11 that I had put across, to be honest. But I can assure you, I have put a lot of ideas across in the executive. I'm the type of person that don't like to take unilateral credit. But I mean, I make research, I consult, and I also try to tap in from other people's ideas. But I can assure you that people who I've worked with, people who know me will tell you, whatever ideas I have, I share them. But then again, I mean, my ideas, where it stops is to share my ideas, it depends whether they're implemented or not. I'm not going to say all my ideas are implemented. There are some that I have shared and they've been looked at and they were deemed to be very good and they were implemented. Maybe some of my ideas may not be good as well. But as I said, some of these things, you get to a point where you are sitting, even as a substitute or on the pitch, and you realize that, oh, the game is not going as planned. Maybe even the captain to make way for somebody else to come in. All due respect to the current GFF leadership, I am not saying that they haven't done it. They've done very good work. But what I'm saying is we are not getting the result deserved. We do not. wanted to win. And there are a lot of other things that need to be looked at. And when you get to a point when they start booing you, I think you need to look at a plan to fire in some more engines, bring in fresh legs to move the football forward. And that is exactly what.
So I take it that there's something fundamentally wrong within the management of the GFF.
Sorry, I didn't get that part of your question. Could you please come back again?
Listening to you, would you agree if I throw at you that something is fundamentally wrong in the administration of football and the executive of the GFF for that matter?
Yes, definitely. That one I would admit to. That's why we are looking at a systemic change, not the individual city. It's the systemic change.
Okay. You have mentioned a lot of things in your previous question, right? Now, in your previous answer, I beg your pardon. But when people say you have been in the GFF for the past number of years, and you are also part and parcel of whatever problem you are saying you're putting out here, what do you say to those people?
Yes, I am part of the GFF executive. There's no doubt about that. I mean, that's an established fact. But as I said, everybody has a role to play, and if you bring in your role, you bring in your ideas. It depends whether those ideas are deemed to be important or deemed to be something that can be used. But if they're not used, what happens is you feel that you belong to a group where things are not happening the way they are. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to make a change by coming forward to say, okay, I feel I can do this, and I have so and so ideas, I can bring them forward. And that was why anybody that I meet, I show them my starting 11 to say, I have ideas, and this is what I can bring. Usually some people things happen and then they go on social media and start complaining about their executive. I am not that type. But things I feel are not going right. My colleagues in the executive know that I bring out what I am supposed to. I am very vocal, and I will talk on things that are pertinent. When I feel these are issues I need to bring, I always bring my ideas. I'm never shy to bring them, and I'm never shy to be corrected. But there is an issue with this system, and what we are trying to change. We want a systemic change. So we put in things that we believe when we come in, those things help us move forward. So an issue of systemic change, not individual. To say I am part of the executive, yes. But then again, there are things that you feel this is my idea, but you have limitations as to what you can do, what you can perform. So you cannot go beyond what, I mean, just today, I've received a letter that my appointment as chairman of the procurement committee has been terminated. So there are certain powers I have, there are certain powers I don't have.
Well, a colleague of mine in the Gambia just sent in this question. He said, you call your mission restore confidence. People think that the GFF has a credibility problem with allegations of corruption in contracts, procurement. You just said your appointment as chair of the procurement committee has been terminated. Well, a colleague just wants to ask about the allegations of corruptions in procurement, a division that you headed. Now, are these valid accusations?
Okay. I got my appointment as chairman of GFF Procurement Committee in May 2020. That's when I got my appointment. And we sat over, I can tell you the procurements we sat over. That is the procurement of the pickup for the women's hall, the procurement of materials for women, that was during the COVID time, the procurement of tickets for the national team, and the procurement of an artificial turf. But then let me tell you how the procurement committee works. There is a procurement committee and a contracts committee, right? The procurement committee looks into or seeks for quotations for any items that are more than $500,000. right? I hope I'm online.
You are very clear. We can hear you loud and
Can you
clear.
hear me?
Loud and clear. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
I
We can
think
hear you.
I think we had an issue with the network. So we
Okay.
sat over those things since 2020, about 4 issues, and I've named them. That's the pickup, the women, which we sat and we've submitted our report. I mean, the one we've recommended, and the pickup is yet to be purchased. But we also sat over the procurement of the 2 pitches, which we have submitted our report, our minutes to the contracts committee. But as I said, the way the procurement committee works, our mandate is to look into any procurement that is over 500,000 and above. Any procurement that is over that is sent to my committee, which I head, and I have Mr. Sangdong in that committee, Abdul Karim C, and Usman Chodrame of the Gambia Football Federation as procurement officer. What we do, we put this in public domain. We send out a request for quotation in the newspapers. When quotations are received, we open these tenders and invite the bidders and negotiate with them with a view to getting discounts. When we negotiate and they provide whatever they are going to submit, we do our recommendations over to the contracts committee that is headed by the president. That is where the procurement committee stops. We talk to the suppliers and then we hand them over to the contracts committee to continue with them. So right after we identify or recommend a specific contractor or bidder, we pass them on to the contracts committee, so they deal with the contracts committee all throughout. So they have nothing to do with us. We sort for quotes, make recommendations, and pass it on to the contracts committee. So if there are issues of allegations of corruption, to be honest, I mean, I am not aware of any. Again, issues of alleged corruption needs a careful and balanced approach, because sometimes when you say this and you do not substantiate them with facts, I mean, then it just exacerbates already a problem that is there. But then, if an institution's information for too long, this is what invite people to start thinking otherwise they are at liberty. But I can assure you, my committee has never had anything to deal with when it comes to corruption or anything of that sort. I don't remember that at any point in time at the GFF.
So, can you be on the record here now that there is no corruption in the GFF that you are part of?
I am not part of any corruption in the GFF. Never have I had any intention. That's why I said, even the GFF, some of these corruption allegations people bring, I always say bring proof, substantial proof, because sometimes you could I mean, accuse them when you do not have proof. He who alleges must prove. So I cannot even point fingers and say the GFF is corrupt. For me, my issues are systemic change, because I have no proof. I've never got anyone taking any money to say this. But I know for a fact that I have never been involved in any issues of corruption, and I have never been a party to, and never have I had any intentions to.
Well, that's a fair assessment, because somebody just sent a question from Banjul, and it relates to you being in charge of funds that apparently was missing on a trip. And as an official, now he says, can you ask him to explain what happened?
I am more than happy. That's the question on a lot of people's lips. Yes, this is some money that I was entrusted to go to Angola as head of delegation in November 2019. But prior to that, in September 2019, I was nominated as head of delegation and advance party for Gambia's game against Angola in Luanda. Before I came in, I think it was Matar Mboj, who was the administrator of national team at the time, who had made some contacts with hotels in Angola to collect invoices. And the cheapest one was Victoria Garden Hotel in Angola. This invoice was given to me, and I think the total invoice that time was about 30,700. I forgot the figure. That was the actual amount when they did the actual budget for the team. And so it was a matter of me going to Angola and just pay. The team stays, then we come back. And on this particular trip, I was not paid my per diem because I was told the federation had no money at the time to pay me any per diem. So I traveled just with the money that was entrusted to me to take care of the team hotel, team accommodation and food. When I got to Angola, I was hosted by the honorary consul, Mr. Haji Jawara, who took me to his house and said, "You can't go to the hotel now, you can stay in my house." I said, "Okay, but I still need to go to the hotel to negotiate." His brother drove me to the hotel. When I went there, I sat with the manager, one Mr. Jose. Myself, I had the money to make the payment. But before I made the payment, I said to him, I said, "Listen, Mr. Jose, I come from the Ghana Football Federation. We're a very small country and we're very poor. This is the amount I know. This is what you've agreed with them. But is that I can negotiate that I can send my federation some resources to take back home? Because 30,700 or 31,700, I cannot remember the figure, is a lot of money. I know this is the amount that you charge." He said, "What do you want?" I said, "We are coming back here in November for our AFCON qualifiers. What I want to do, can you reduce the room rates and the cost of food? Because they were charging us about $35 or $30 per food. Could you reduce the room rate so that we can say, that way when we come in next time, I can assure you this is where we are going to stay." He paused and looked at me and said, "I don't understand." I said, "I want you to give a discount so I can take back home." He said, "No, people would come and ask for commission." I said, "I don't need the commission. It's not my money because I love my country." We negotiated and I was able to save $6,000. And this was just the general manager and God. I saved $6,000 plus. And mind you, on this trip, I was not giving a dime for my party. I had to take care of my own hotel and everything. When I got the money, I texted them in the emergency committee page to say, "Guys, I have managed to save the Ghana Football Federation $6,000. They said, "How?" I said, "Well, I used my business acumen, my business tactics to talk to this guy to say, this is where we're going to come back. If you save us, we will come back again." Because in business, that's what we call the more, the more you use the service, then the discount you get. I was surprised. I did not touch a dime on that money. I brought it back. If I had wanted to steal GFF's money, that was where I would have taken my commission or saved that money and keep quiet. Because it was just me, I could have just come. I don't know invest. I could have forged invoices and receipts. I did not do that. Based on that performance, I was appointed to go as head of delegation again. And this time around, I went through Casablanca. The first time I went to Ethiopia. When I went through Casablanca, because I had a letter, the gendarme scanned my bag and they saw the money. They asked what that was for. I said, "Well, this is a money that I'm taking to Angola because my national team is playing." I showed them the letter to declare that this is the amount of money. I was there, I was interrogated for a while for them to confirm whether it was true or not. After a while, they said, "Well, you do not have a visa to leave this place so you can go to hotel. You're just going to have to go to the lounge." I went to the lounge, but then I went to the lounge that you pay, and I sat there to wait for 13 hours because I didn't have a visa. In that lounge, that's where I may have inadvertently dozed off or something because I was there by myself. I didn't even realize that my money got missing until I got to Angola. Because it's only the gendarme that would have known that I was carrying cash. Nobody else would know that I was carrying cash because I was not flaunting anything I wasn't showing. But when I got to Angola, I found everything to say, "Reach Angola, everything is okay." But just before I was going down to go and pay the money, because the general manager came and knocked and said, "Sadibou, you're back." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm coming to see you." After a while, he heard me crying over the phone because I had called to tell the guys that the money is gone. Is missing. I don't know how it happened, but some of my other valuables are missing, but I intend to pay every dime of it. I had people who told me at the time, "Do not worry, we will figure out." To be honest, they were supportive at the time. Some were to say, "Oh, it was your crying that we're going to use as a ringing tone." I said, "I intend to pay every dime, every part of this because it happened to me." Okay? Now, when I went to the general, I sat there for a while. The general manager called my mom and said, "Sadibou, I'm waiting for you. Where are you?" I said, "Something terrible happened." He said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Money got missing." He said, "Casablanca?" I said, "Yes." He said, oh, I know these things happen. He said, what happened to you? I went from Luanda to Portugal, and I don't know whether I was gassed or something, but by the time I got to where I was, so I said, okay. When I got to, when I went to his room, to his office, he gave me a discount. Imagine the money that got stolen from me was 25,400. But the man said, because of my attitude in my previous trip, he was so impressed that he gave me a discount and said, how much money do your people have? Because the president was at the time talking to his counterpart to see if they could pay the money and then we pay. They said they were not in a position. He said, I could give you a discount. I said, they're in euros. He said, if you can give me 16,900 euros, take it as my personal discount for what you had manifested in your previous trip, because not a lot of people would do that. I couldn't believe it. I told them, I called the executive and I said, this asked me 16,000. He said, the rest of it, take it as my discount for you. Right? And that was what happened. So I asked them to bring in the 16,000, and then I told them that the money that that they had brought in, that is what I will pay. As soon as I came back, I immediately went to the bank and I started paying. They were not even aware that I had started paying. Until the time they called me in the office to say that write a letter so that we can discuss it with the exec. I said I had started paying. They were surprised. I said I have my receipts. I got my receipts. Then I wrote the letter, and then the emergency committee sat over it. They decided they were going to set up a commission, and I was not sitting there whilst they were meeting. I said I was game. When they established the commission, I think it's actually one Mr. Jane from GNOC and one Mr. Bajo from the Independent Stadium, who's the finance manager. I went in there, I testified, I showed them my receipts and everything. They did their conclusion. In their findings, I got a letter from the president of the Gambia Football Federation to say that, the panel recognized commitment to the activities of the GFF, and sometimes, availing the federation my personal resources, voluntary pay missing with GFF, and also established that the said missing amount got stolen from me during my mission, and recommended that the unpaid balance be waived. That was a letter that I received from the president of the Gambia Football Federation after the findings of the commission. It's not a commission I have established, but the reports are there for anybody to go to the Gambia Football Federation and collect. Because I don't have a copy of the report, it's the findings and the recommendation of the commission that I have. But I can tell you, I am one person, I do not remember who, that the federation will need resources, and I will give them my own personal cash of almost up to $500,000 and say, go and use it, do the money and refund it. I have done that. Not once, not twice. I will avail them my own resources, my vehicle for the pickup, for the coach and other things. So I don't think if I had intentions of stealing GFF money, I would have done that, or even.
Are you there?
Yes, I am. I am.
Okay, wonderful. Now, you have been part of the GFF executive for 6 years.
4 years. This is my 4th year.
For 4 years, sorry. Now,
yeah.
How do you extricate yourself from all these things that you've talked about? For example, the Stadia project, which has been a hot topic in Gambian football lately. How do you, as an aspirant for the presidency, how do you extricate yourself out of these problems?
Let me say this, I'm not even trying to extricate myself from the problem. I realize there are issues with the system, and I believe we can correct those. In every government, you have different people responsible for certain portfolios. I am not responsible for projects because I do not do the project documents. I do not meet with the contractors. There was a time that I was to be talking to some of the consultants, and I realized that, the things that we're doing, some of these consultants get more of their monies than even the contractors. And they will tell you that I am one person that does not mince his words. Even the way I talk to them, I'll tell them this is something that is acceptable. And I did say this in an executive meeting, that contractors that have been giving sums of monies to run projects and they do not deliver, we should be in a position to take them to court for not fulfilling their contractual obligations. But I have limitations as to what I can do. I'm trying to extricate myself. The reason why I'm even trying to change, and that is why I have not even resigned from the Gambian Football Federation, because I am there and I believe somebody is in a position to be raising the red flag or to be saying, hey guys, I think we should do this way. I have limitations as to what I can do. Things that fall under my power, I will ensure that I do them to the best of my ability. I was in the GFF Finance Committee in the first term, 2014 to 2018. I resigned because things I did not accept, there were things that I didn't agree to. And the president who still sits there called me and I told him my reasons. But I refused to go to the media because I did not want to bring any noise around it. I told him my personal reasons why I had to resign. I said A, B, C, D, and F, or whatever numbers they were. If we do that, I'm ready to come in. But if not, I do not want to be part of this. 2018, when we were going to Congress again to elect somebody, the ideas they brought, I bought in the ideas because we had another candidate who I believed was not the best candidate at the time, because I looked at those who were, aspiring. I looked at what they had. I was appointed campaign manager. We made promises to people. We made promises to stakeholders. Now, if you are part of a group and you are tasked with the responsibility of going to make promises or meeting people to tell them, guys, come and join us, we will do A, B, and C. You to a point you realize that things are not going. And this is Gambia. This is the Gambia Football Federation. It's not owned by one individual. We all belong. If I see things that are wrong, I will stand up and say, guys, I believe we should do A, B, and C. The president knows that. I always speak my mind. I am one person who goes to him and tells him, I believe we should do B and C. That's why I said I'm not trying to extricate myself from the problem. But I speak my mind. And democracy is the minds of the majority. If you are in there, you speak your mind, and issues that you feel should be treated are done the other way. I cannot go out in the public domain and start saying A, B, and C. I speak where I'm supposed to speak, and that's where my limitations are. So that's why I feel there's a need for a change, and with the vision that I have, there is in the executive who believe I have what it takes to lead them. So that is why we are coming in. So we are trying to correct those wrongs and make sure to where you're supposed to be.
Okay. Now, leadership comes with results. The results we've had in our football, has been monumental in the past few years.
Yeah.
Now, our U17 won a championship. We went to the AFCON. Your league growing better. What do you think would prompt the electorate to vote out a president who, quite frankly, has results to show for his leadership in terms of Gambia's international reputation in football today?
I think I said this, if you want to measure the success of the Gambia Football Federation based on our performance, on the performance of the senior national team, I think it would not be a bit fair to the local-based players. We have different categories of teams. We have the A national team, that is the senior national. We have the team, that is local-based team. We have the U23. We have the U20. We have the U17. We also have a female A team. We have a female U20 team. We have a female U17 team. We also have a league. The Gambia Football Federation would not have been there if it's not for the league clubs. Even the RFAs would not have been there if it's not for the league clubs. These league clubs must feel that they are the primary stakeholders of the Gambia Football Federation. Football and a pitch are the two most important aspects when it comes to the game. Without a ball and a pitch, there's nothing for us to administer. We do not have the pitches for the players. How often do we give the teams the balls that they need to play? Now, all these clubs want to become professional clubs so they are able to sell players substantial amounts to be able to run their clubs. The league club needs to be professionalized. I am one of the strongest advocates for the league to be professionalized. And I can tell you that Now, if you work on the grassroots, we only work on the top. What is happening at the bottom? Because the national team is there. The players who have gone professional are already playing. What happens when those ones graduate? There has to be a transition phase, a transition whereby the younger players who are playing are looking up to say, oh, I can get to this level and I can go. But some of these players would have to force their ways to go through the back way to be playing. We have players who are playing in the national team who've been called up, to be honest, that have gone through the back way. But we need to make these players feel that you can play here, you can announce, and you can go further. But if you do not work on the league, we sit now, and you get league matches being cancelled within 24 hours, within 48 hours when you've already come. How many pitches do we have? Just 2 pitches. Honestly, you have to give the Gambia Football Federation credit for spending a lot of resources in trying to get us qualified to AFCON, because a lot of resources was being plowed there at the detriment of the grassroots. We've qualified. There should be focus on the grassroots. We need to regularize that. Mind you, we have had age cheating issues. What have you done about that? Age cheating has caused us a lot of issues, and you wouldn't say it's individual A or individual B. It's the system. If you put in a system that would rid it of the whole system, it helps us, because what the school sports has done last week was remarkable. What they did was all schools that have age or to have brought in athletes that are not within the age bracket or in school, they ban them. That is what we do. We have to be very surgical to make sure we change the mindset of the people. We want to bring football and its benefits to the doorstep of every game. To do that, you have to get all stakeholders involved, the groundwork seller, the people who have that, CSR, so that these people can come and watch league matches. You can earn gate takings to be able to give back to the clubs. But there's no system in place for the clubs to be able to see that, okay, there is hope for us. You cannot just be relying on subvention. That's why even in our starting 11, we said we are going to increase the league prize money so that any club that wins the league has at least 1.5 million to help you buy your tickets. You can travel. You do not have to wait. You're sitting here scavenging for money or going around looking for donation. But at least if you have that, it puts you on a pedestal to be able to start. With that, if you go in, we can look at all the other areas that we can improve on.
Now, you talked about professionalizing the league, and I would welcome that, and I know a lot of people would welcome that. But when you sit back and look around, I just read in the papers last week, a parastatal team could not even pay their own players for the last 2-3 months. So how do you reconcile that?
Because we are not professional. Once we become professional, there will be systems in place that would ensure that all the clubs conform to that. Now, clubs can do as they wish to run their clubs. Sometimes you even have issues where a player his player contract has ended with the club. They refuse to release the player and they tell you the player needs clearance. From what I understand, if you have a contract and your contract expires, you're free to go. So there are a lot of issues that need to be regularized. Then you need a legal department in the Football Federation that can advise as to how you do this. Our idea to professionalize the league. Mind you, the Gambia Football Federation has actually put in some money for us to go on a study tour, and we went on a study tour in 2020 January. Myself and second vice president Ibu Fai and the competitions director. Since 2020 January, that was when we went for a professional league study tour in Morocco. And we've been back. I believe by now a lot has been done. When some of the guys that when I brought it, there were people who said, is this attainable? If you do not try, you would not be in a position to achieve. When you professionalize the league, you ensure that there are criteria that every club aspiring to become professional has to meet. When they meet those criteria, then they are deemed to be a professional club. They have to register as a business. They have to ensure they have a secretariat. They have to have their own play pitch, whether it's theirs or they have an agreement with any stadium to say that that's where they're going to play their league matches. They're going to have a standard contract in place whereby at least a minimum wage would be in place to pay these people social security and all these other issues. So they are going to be bound by the labor laws of the country. So if a club gets to a point where you have those sort of issues, you do not sit and just say, I'm not paying them because of this. They have their own financial issues. And I've seen countries where they will tell you the support we give to clubs, because they're professional, we give it to them in phases because they're more money than we are giving. What they do, they'll give you a certain amount and say by the end of the season or mid-season, if you're having issues with paying your players, that is where the funding comes from. Or they could give you some money to do that. When you due any sums, they take them back. So all these things are things that the federation could have jumped in to say, let us call these clubs and sit them and find an amicable solution as to how do we do this. But if you do not link them, you're serving the clubs, but there's little link between the clubs and the federation. It's just the league. And so if you professionalize the league, there are going to be systems in place that will read the whole system of this delinquency and all the other issues that these clubs are complaining about.
Now, listening to you, I mean, you sound very credible here, but let me put this to you. If everything you said here was put before the GFF and the GFF did not pay attention to it, can you go on the record and say it's a failure on the side of the GFF, which you are part of?
You're talking about the professional league?
Yeah, and the proposals that you all put together that were not even considered for implementation.
I mean,
according to your narrative.
They have a timeline, because I am not the head, as I said. Yes, the way the GFF is structured, you have, I would call it, different cabinet ministers that sit there. Different cabinet ministers and different people who are responsible for different portfolios. I am not responsible for competition. The second vice president responsible for competition is another champion of the league being professionalized, I have to say. He is another advocate for the league being professionalized. But as I said, this is a document that was submitted to the Ghanaian Football Federation from 2020, since we came back from Morocco. Last year, we've had the UEFA team coming in to help us with the professionalization of the league. How do we start? What do we do? Again, I am not the one who gets to implement. There are people responsible. And what you do is to bring your ideas and your input to say, let us do this. But if you are not the implementer, it becomes a problem. So maybe the person implementing has different ideas, and maybe they have, a different timeline as to when they believe this could do, or they have other priority areas. That is why I feel we are coming in to make a substitution. It is not late. The game is still on. Right now, we are just warming up so that we can make the necessary substitution to achieve this, because the documents are there. It is possible. It is doable. So we can. If you want to call it a failure, I would rather not call it a failure. I would say it's a slow pace, and it's something that we can fasten and ensure that all the legal structures, administrative, financial, are put in place so we can achieve it. We need to create timelines. We need to create timelines that are achievable and start working towards.
Wonderful. Again, when you say I am not the implementer, it raises some concern here. Again, it goes back to a question asking if you are extricating yourself. You are an executive, and now you're picking yourself as an individual, saying I am not an implementer. Who is the implementer in the GFF, if I may ask?
President of the Ghanaian Football Federation is the legal head. He has the powers to direct and implement issues. If you go by the constitution of the Ghanaian Football Federation, he's the legal head of the Ghanaian Football Federation. The executive can make decisions, the General Assembly makes decisions. Him is the head of the GFF that can say, okay, this can go on. For instance, if the General Assembly decides that we are going to give each club $1 million tomorrow, that cannot happen without the president giving the authority. So those are the things that I'm talking about. And he has people who are responsible for every area or every aspect of things. I cannot jump in some area and say, no, we have to do this, whether they like it or not. I have to go beyond my boundaries, and then I can be punished, I can be fined, banned, or whatever. But leader of the institution is the person who implements. And the executive with the ideas, because we have committees, and these committees do recommendations. They sit, they are technically advisory bodies. They bring them to the executive, and the executive agrees. If the executive agrees or otherwise, it is the president who has the powers to say, let us do A, B, and C. Nobody else, because usually the legal head, he has the power to say, we can do this to be in so and so timeline based recommendations of AC. So that's why in order to sit there, should be somebody who has great vision. You know, you have things that you want from people, you set targets, and you expect people to deliver. I have to give him credit. He has done a lot. He has done a lot. But as I said, we believe the game plan is not going according to what we want. And the team could do better so we could get the required results. If you feel in a team and you see them playing a very lackluster game to earn your draw, and you feel you can score goals to win, you would bring in. You were a commentator. Obviously, you need to bring in more firepower, you know, to change the game. Because even when commentators see somebody warming, this guy is somebody who can change the game. So it is up to the stakeholders to see what we have to say. Is it possible for this guy to change the game? Not based on what he has presented.
Okay. Now, listening to you, I want to play devil's advocate here. What do you tell a voter who tells you, so for 4 years, you sat there and you come up with recommendations and the president has to make decisions, and that was okay with you, even though what you put there as an executive is not what the president approved? What do you tell that voter?
Not all decisions are by the president. There are certain decisions that come under his domain. As I said, make recommendations, the executive approves or otherwise. And when the executive approves or otherwise, it is the president that has to say, okay, we can do that. That's why even in the constitution, it says, if there's a tie, you know, if there's a voter tie, the president has the casting vote. Has no powers. If the executive decides that they're going to get rid of me tomorrow, and the president decides that he's not going to, unless and until he writes the letter, it doesn't happen. So that is what I'm saying. It is the executive that decides. But there are certain decisions that come on the purview of the president. If the General Assembly says, this is the budget we have implemented, this is what we've adopted and approved, this is how much we want to spend on schools football, this is how much we want to spend on women's football, this is how much we want to spend. He has a minister, a cabinet minister, finance person, who is responsible for that. But that person would have to consult the president before he makes decisions, because he's the legal head. So nothing happens in the federation that the president should not be aware of. That is why you have a head. You would be an institution or an executive where you have different executive members and no head. So unilateral decision, I think, is the only that has to go to parliament and decide it. So there will be something that has to be debated and agreed upon.
Wonderful. Now, you talked about restoring confidence in the leadership or administration of football in the Gambia. And you talked about grassroots football. Of course, there are lots of academies now in the country. As you know, I have interest in one. Now, in your administration, what's the way forward with grassroots footballs and empowering academies as a grassroots base?
The first thing that we have to do is to regularize grassroots football. All the academies in this country need to be registered and put on a database. We have a platform or a system in place that we're going, a digital system where all the children that belong to any academy are registered on that system. The date and year they join that academy would be recorded and it is inputted. And in this system, they are not just going to take their birth certificates. We're going to get to the bottom of it to get substantial proof that this is the actual date of birth. If it needs bringing their infant welfare cards, we would do that. We don't have an academic tournament. There's a schools football. And that game, the schools football is only limited to the schools. We want to make it schools and open football, whereby all these academies can can have their own. They go on the school's football. We are going to empower them by giving them the required tools, the required machinery. The technical department under the technical director would have to come up with programs of activities with what we have. We'll put them together to ensure that these academies are well registered. When these academies register these kids in their grassroots sport, you know that any child who has been with you from the age of 12 to 21, by the time they become a professional, your due training and solidarity compensation. How many academic trained here, they do not even know how to access these funds. But when you are in this system, any day your player becomes a professional, it is there in the system. You just need to tap in to say, oh, we are claiming our training compensation. You do not need to fight with another club to say he was my player. No, he was not. It's already there in the system. You do your training compensation. The GFCs, they know that this academy, you need to get funds to run their academies. Academies also would have a tournament where we are going to invite scouts to be looking at these kids with the possibility to see whether they can transfer them or they can identify them and sign an agreement with these clubs to say, by the time they reach a certain age, I want them. You see the likes of the Liverpools, the Arsenals would sign kids that are in other countries. We want to bring in scouts. Has your academy ever been in any tournament that scouts have been here?
Well, we've actually brought scouts to the Gambia.
That's what I'm saying. But we are going to encourage scouts. Well, we are going to do this. So then,
just in defense also, there's currently right now a U15 academy league in progress that is going on right now. And I think the GFF is involved through its technical director, if I'm right. But I know that is ongoing right now.
That is something that the technical director has always dreamed of, because him and I are in the same club. He's a strong advocate for younger players. Everybody knows he brings in young players, even when he was manager for Hawks Football Club. But that aside, I do not want to speak on his behalf. But what we are trying to do, we are going to ensure that the grassroots football is regularized, in that all these issues of age cheating are rid of. Eventually, these Nawetans, the morning games are all going to be, that's the idea we have in the summer. The kids will have to play a game, whether it's in the morning or before the big matches we want to have. There was a day I was driving past Bakote, and I saw young kids playing. They said it was a young, a U15 tournament that was organized by the local. It was full. It was full. How much money could those academies have made from gate things? We need to create systems in place whereby they can make some money and see to it that they can generate revenues. You know how much money you're spending on your academy. It's a lot of money. So we need to bring systems in place. We need to bring in something in place wherein scouts can come in and look at these kids and say, okay, say that player, I'll keep him for the next 2-3 years. We can even sign a pre-contract where his parents are in the shop. They can even start funding him. Eventually, by the time he gets the required age, he could travel, or they could even take him to Europe on a scholarship where he can start playing and do that. But if those things are not implemented, they do not work. But you need to have ideas. These are doable. It's not things that the federation will have to do all the funding. You can tap funds from other players, because when you do that, you're able to regularize this.
I just got another question that just came in. Somebody is asking, does the government of the Gambia trust the Gambia Football Federation? I don't know. I don't live there.
I am not in the. I don't sit. I do not sit. I do not sit as a government official, so I wouldn't be able to speak on behalf of the government. I would rather the government does that. I am a member of the Gambia Football Federation, so I'm not sure. I don't know. But I mean, obviously, government puts money into the Gambia Football Federation, so I don't think that's a matter that somebody would say the government doesn't trust the Gambia Football Federation.
Well and dandy. Now, in my preparations for this interview, yesterday, I saw 5 chairmen of divisional football associations in the Gambia endorse your opponent. How do you convince those people to change their minds?
I think what should be the first thing that should be established, whether they were the ones that actually signed it. These are things you can't say. I mean, I haven't spoken to any, but that needs to be established. And if you look at the letter is so, I'm not scared to say it's an oxymoron. We were launching on the 12th. The letter came out on the 11th to say they do not have time for politics. They're focusing. If you don't have time for politics, why would you just focus on what you're doing then? Why do you have to write to the federation? And secondly, the RFAs have nothing to do with the team getting ready to go to Chad. They have absolutely nothing to do with it. They have nothing to do with the national team department. The team manager who does his budget, the coach does his selection. Since when have RFAs been involved in national team issues? The only thing they do is they get invited, they come and watch and go. But with all due respect to them, I can't say they were the one that signed it because I was not there. That has to be established. But it means one person was going around asking them to sign that document. What I can assure the stakeholders is, let us wait until August. Then we will know who is where. Okay? We are not trying to buy anybody. We are not promising anybody anything to say, if you vote for us, I'll make you travel, or if you vote for us, I'll give you this. You've been there for the past 8 years, and you know there's not a lot that you can account for in your region. The regions continue to struggle to get their subventions. They know they run the third division leagues. They continue to struggle to get their subventions. The RFA presidents in their regions, even mobile. You have an RFA president who lives in West Coast, for instance, and imagine how big West Coast is. He lives in probably Brickham, and he has to go to Buyam or Bull to go to a final. The next day, he has to go somewhere else. He does not have the resources to do that. He does not have the mobility to do that. But yet, you have the time to write a letter to say that you are focusing on that. I totally respect that if they are the ones who do it. I have no issues with them. But what we are doing is to tell the electorates we want to bring in change that can take us for better. Some of these RFAs have not had congresses for over 4 years. How? Because you cannot blame them. They do not even have the resources to hold a congress. How do you sit down and then you are saying that you endorse a certain candidate because you do not have time for the AFCON? With all due respect to them, we appreciate that, but we are focusing on getting the job done to make things work and work for the better.
Now, you know, you've given me a Pandora box of issues. Now, that letter you've put up for conjecture, time will tell. But again, Sadibou, all these problems, you've called yourself an outspoken person within the GFF. All these problems are going on within the GFF. And for 4 years, you just sat on it and went along with the wave. You know, that's what a voter.
I wouldn't say
I
don't think
that question. But why?
I don't think I've not sat on it because I've always brought up issues. If anybody is willing to sit face to face and we agree to these things, and secondly, I'm not the only outspoken person. There are other very outspoken personalities that executive. They are very outspoken personalities in that executive. I can assure you that. There was a time when people had that was and the issues between the third VP and the president. And people were like, oh, these are the issues that happened. I said, this is what you people have had. I said, you should be in our expo for me. You think we're going to fight. These are issues we bring up. I'm not on these issues. I speak where I am supposed to speak. These are issues I was supposed to speak where I was supposed to. And that is in the executive. That is where I was mandated to sit and speak. And I've brought them up. So if you speak and you continue to speak and these things are not happening, that is why we feel there should be a change. And you've seen that I've got endorsement from an executive member. And there are other executive members who actually endorsed me. So these are issues that I have brought whilst I was there. It's not that the idea just came now. I've never sat on these things. I'm one person that when issues happen, I bring them up. The third vice president of the Gambia Football Federation, General Tamba, is another person. He brings these issues up. Even the president will bring up. I say any other person. There are people out there who speak. But when you speak and these things are not changing, you get to a point, as I said, where even your own fans are booing you. Lee Boy and Kieran Dyer fought on, say, in one match, and they are from the same team because one of them felt he wasn't passing the ball, and he wasn't doing what they wanted to do to win the game. So it's where you feel that we need to make the changes so that this game can go forward.
You talked about change. Again, you guys have done a phenomenal good job. Good job. On average, you guys have done well for Gambian football.
Certainly,
without a doubt. It's been baby steps we've taken to where we have gotten. Now everyone knows about Gambian football, even though a lot more remains to be done. But again, there's been a lot of growth. I don't, whatever way you measure it, I've administrated football in the Gambia before, and I give you guys credit. But now, how do you separate the chaff from the grain? That's what I'm trying to understand here. What is it that the current president is not doing that you can bring to the table to move the boat forward?
I think my starting 11 has made that clear. I'm not sure if I had shared my starting 11 with you.
No, you've not.
Maybe I haven't. I should share that with you. My starting 11 has captured that because we believe that there are a lot of things that we need to put in place so that we can get what we're looking for. There's 11 points that we set because my vision is to uplift and raise a preeminent standard of football in the Gambia, to place the Gambia football governing body on a pedestal for technical, structural, and financial self-sustenance. Oftentimes, we will tell you that we don't have the funds to do this, or we do not have funds to do that. We have the football hotel. That could be a business of its own. We can allow the football hotel to operate privately, where you give them tasks, give them targets to achieve and bring them so that they can bring funds into the Gambian Football Federation. The concept and the idea is brilliant, but is it getting you what you had initially planned for it to get you? No. That is where you look at what you've done and say, no, we need to change game plan so to get this. And we said, we want to stimulate interest and passion because the interest has dwindled. There are a lot of people now, you talk to them, they're like, Gambia Football League. I was part of the MCC. You go to certain places, you talk about the Gambia Football Federation, they look at you, oh, we're going to put the money. But because they do not understand, a lot of people have painted us, we are a bunch of people. Okay. But as I said, but these issues of alleged corruption should be approached carefully. But if you sit on information for too long, if you do not engage the public, they begin to feel that these people are concealing certain things. And that is why we said we are going to come with improved and accountable governance. You have to be accountable to the people. We have to ensure that people know what we are doing. We are open, we are proactive. We go to them, we share what we are doing. Everything is there for them to see. Even the committees, we said all the committees, we will ensure that there is at least one person who is not from the football family, unless we do not have people that are willing to. But you have to have people from outside, independent, who sit in these committees so that they get to understand how football is run. They will be able to convince people who convince others. Otherwise, the whole thing is confined within a certain parameter and it is just us. So it is difficult for us to convince people. Now, we are talking about the league professionalization and development. We're talking about sustainable infrastructural development, grassroots football, income generation and mobilization, and judicious spending of these funds. Enhancement, capacity building, constitutional reforms, because when you look at the constitution the way it is, there are certain things that we feel can change. We have one president, 3 vice presidents, 4 other executive members, 2 female and 2 male, one of the male who should be a retired referee, or one of whom should be a retired referee. It could be a male or female. Those other 2 sit there without any portfolio. We are proposing to the electorates to say, these other members that are here, how about we create a cabinet? You have the chairperson of women's sitting here. We have the president of school sports sitting there. Why don't we ask the electorates to give them fourth and fifth vice president portfolios? It's not going to cost us anything because they still sit on the board. It's just the name of the position. In so doing, they are cabinet ministers for those portfolios. Because currently you have a third vice president who's responsible for grassroots football and women's football. And on the same board, you have the president of grassroots football and the chairperson of women's football. It creates a bit of ambiguity. So why don't you do that to be able to have all these other people doing their job? So let us work on these things and make the necessary changes. Let us also have checks and balances. The reason why some people tell you, oh, the federation, because all the signatories come from the executive. The time they were doing this, maybe there were issues between the executive and the secretary at the time, I'm not sure. But I feel these A signatories can come from the executive and the B signatories can come from the staff. So that even the staff who are custodians of the books feel that they are signing, they know what they are signing. So if a signatory comes from the secretariat, another signatory comes from the executive, it helps balance issues. So when you do that, it makes everybody feel how to play. But if you take all their responsibilities, you as the executive, you want to be the policy maker and the implementer, you're very much involved in the day-to-day running affairs of the federation, you can, but do not take their responsibilities. You set tasks and allow them to do that, because as a good leader, you must set examples, you must lead by example, you must allow people to do their things, you must set tasks and expect them to deliver. So when you bring in those things, it's easy for people to be able to get that. CSR, corporate social responsibilities. In times like this, when the GFF is struggling with image, CSR comes to cushion that. We want to work with UNFPA, the UNICEF, with these malaria programs, these child fund program, advocacy programs. They have funds that they're using for this. Engage them and tap in where they have this. They can fund it so that the happens. Engage the community, so they see it as this is something we are all benefiting from, and not just a group of people who probably they feel sit there just to make party and enjoy allowances.
Well, Mr. Sadibou Kamaso, we enjoyed your company today. I got one last question. This interview was supposed to end at an hour 15 minutes. We want to keep it an hour 15 minutes. Now you talked about the NCC.
I see a question on the screen from Wamina Mimi Thomas. She's asking for the money that FIFA gave us to develop the parks.
You may go ahead and answer that question.
Yeah, that's why I said the GFF, everybody is responsible for certain portfolio. There's a project manager who is in a position to answer that question. I cannot say things I do not have the facts about. So the project manager would be the right person of the GFF to answer that.
And who is the project manager?
The first vice president.
And that would be?
Mr. Bakari Jame. He's the first vice president. He's the project manager.
We grew up together. He's a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, actually. Now,
Certainly.
I'm going to ask you just two quick questions. You running as president is nothing personal against the current president. Would you put that on the record here?
Certainly not. As I said earlier on, is the systemic change that we are yearning for. I have nothing personal against anybody there in the federation.
Okay, if I put you on the spot and say you've worked with the guy for 4 years,
yes,
tell me, how is he as a leader? What would you say?
Well, I do not want to talk on somebody's personality.
But from a leadership standpoint, what do you think?
That's why I said I'm being very careful talking about, because it's that people tend to. I've said this in during my launching. I said I do not want to comment on individuals. I want to comment on the system and what we have for Ghanaian football. There's immense respect for the current president. If he assigns me any task, even today, I'll get it and get it done. A lot of people said, "Oh, it was because you were taken to a commission, that's why you're angry." And I said, no. The commission was established in 2019. 2019, right after we came, I got appointed as chairman of the procurement committee after that. And I have done other works after that. So it is nothing personal with the president. The idea to come forward is something that was conceived by a group that approached me and said, Sadibou, you and us are here and we've seen some of these things that are happening. It was coming from people from outside. But we believe we need to make a change so that we can go forward. As I said, we are on the team and we believe we can go forward. Why don't you lead us so we can go? I said I needed time to think over it and consult. Consultation, and it was good. And we came forward. So for me, it is just a situation where we want to make a substitution. It's the same team. And what we want to do is to unite the Gambian football. I said it. I want with anybody when we go into office, because some of the people who are supporting me were people I have debated with, were people who have, serious with me when I was campaign manager. But now we all have the same wound. We are going to the same doctor to look for the same treatment. And we've realized that if we come together, we can develop the game rather than be in different groups.
Wonderful. You talked about the NCC. Now, somebody sent a question. You were responsible for flying the team out of Cameroon, and it went down. Maybe
when you say you, who are you talking about? When you say you, who are you referring to? The NCC, the Logistics Committee?
The NCC, which you were part of.
Yes.
Now, can you tell the people, the many fans out there that were disappointed that the team did not arrive on time and that the boys went on social media to vent their frustration? What, if you could, again, I'm being very careful the way I tread here, if you could speak on behalf of the NCC, what would you tell the Gambian football populace?
The NCC has a media person in the name of Musa Sise, who could be the right person. But I think the minister had given an interview and there was a press release on what transpired there. Unless some of the people were not okay. I'm not the spokesperson of the NCC, but I am a member of the logistics committee, which I am chairman. The logistics committee is the committee that was tasked with the responsibility to seek for quotes on the flags. So if you ask me as an individual, I'm not speaking here on behalf of the NCC. I'm speaking here on my own behalf. The logistics committee did that, and we sought for quotes. We got two different airlines, I would say two different carriers that were supposed to bring in to transport the fans and the players separately. There was a separate flight for the players, and there was a separate flight for the fans. Now, when we did the quotation, we requested for quotation from different, travel companies. The logistics committee was tasked to do that. Being vice chairman, I was tasked the responsibility to write to them. And every single email that I write, members of the logistics committee are copied. So there's nothing that one individual can unilaterally take a decision to say, this is what we're going to do. And whatever from these transport companies, the logistics committee looks at it as a group. We make the recommendations and take it to the NCC body to make a decision. It was the NCC that decided these two companies. And this was based on what the logistics committee had recommended, which I am part of. We had an agreement with one of them. That is, when they fly the fans from Gambia, coming back, they have to provide a flight within 48 hours. When you're chartering flights, you do not deal with some of these companies directly. If you understand flight chartering, you deal with the brokers. The Government Federation have dealt with another company in the past. You deal with the brokers who go to these companies, because we have written to some of them directly, but they would not reply. You sign an agreement with them, and these are the terms and conditions of payment. We made the payment. They provided the aircraft. They took us there. The agreement was, let gave us a flight within 48 hours after our last game. When we were signing the agreement, we told them that our first departure date will be the 22nd. We are departing here on the 10th for the fans and return on the 22nd. But this was subjective. This depends on whether the Gambia goes beyond the group stages. If the Gambia goes beyond the group stages, we will notify them right after the game so that they can push the time further or the date for the flight. When we qualified in the first round, we told them, so we're ready for the round of 16. Right after the round of 16, we wrote to them again to say we've qualified. When we went to the quarterfinals, after the game, it was right there. The minister was there. We were all there. That was when we wrote to this company to say we need flight within 4 hours for the agreement. Because it's a flight, they also need to get their landing permits. You have a contractual obligation with a business or with an institution. Now, if they do not deliver, you are not the person to be blamed to say they have not delivered. What you can do is to take legal action. And we have taken that route. We have taken legal action, and there's a legal personnel who's been tasked to do that. And the NCC will handle that. But they have not delivered. They have not delivered the flight. So how can somebody be responsible? If you had an agreement with the person that is running this stream and you say, I want to be on air by 5:15, the audience is waiting. 5:15, he is not there. Can the audience blame you for not being online? You have an agreement with somebody. So you have the legal obligation to court for breaching the contract. So how can you blame an individual or something? We apologize to the general public to say this is what happened. Other countries are in a position to get their own aircraft, like Senegal. They have their own aircraft, even Cameroon. They can just fly and bring their players. But we don't. We change plans. It was never in our interest to do that. I wish people had known the amount of effort to fly the players out of Qatar. So it was never our intention, and we apologize, unreservedly to the Gambians to say this is what happened, but it was not us. We had and we taken steps to recover that, and we hope they do what is needful so that they can. Obviously, they cannot remedy all the damage they've done, but at least they can do something.
I'll leave you with the last words. Talk to the potential voter before we sign off.
Well, I would say we are a critical juncture in the history of our football. We are, there's no doubt. Leadership is an entrustment that must be discharged with humility, humanity, competency, accountability, and transparency. I ask the Gambian population to entrust us with running Gambia Football Federation, although it is the primary stakeholders who vote. But we are saying we want to bring the benefits to the doorstep of every Gambian. Even though they do not vote, there are people, the fans especially, who pay their monies to go and watch games in exchange for what? For nothing. We want Gambian football to change and change for better. As I said, even the best player leaves the pitch at some point. We have no issues with any individual. Our issue is with the system, and we came to go further. We just want to make a substitution so that the tactics get employed to give us the results we desire, so we can start this development from the grassroots and all the pertinent areas concerned for us to deliver. I have learned on this job, nobody will accuse me of corrupt. I am a complacent person. I am hardworking. I believe this is something that I can do if given the opportunity. And this is why I have asked the electorate to give me a resounding mandate so that I can run the affairs of Gambian football. But I also want them to be critics, to be the people who will call us to order anytime they feel we're doing things that are not right. We want to make it an open door policy. Anytime anybody wants to consult us or ideas to meet us, we will be ready to talk to them. That is why I am the type that any media institution calls, I am to talk to you, and we can exchange ideas we can talk on things. So we asked them to give us a resounding mandate so we can change. We are not an individual. We just want to make a change so that Gambian football can develop. I thank everybody for their attention. And if I had said anything that has offended anybody, I apologize. It wasn't meant to, but it's out of love for my country and the passion for this game that has united people that some people even take as a religion. I thank everybody, and I thank you, Mr. Cisse, for giving me the opportunity to come and say these words. I'm not few because I've said so much today. So thank you once more.
Well, that's the way it is. You can come back to Talking Sports anytime. And we also invite the executive of the GFF to come to Talking Sports anytime. For Sadibou Kamaso, Mama Linger Sar on the technical side, till I come your way again next week, inshallah. Tijan Masane Sise, so long. Good night.